YouTube, it is not September 1st. It is also not September 5th. It's actually September 7th. I think there's a typo here. Oh, I know why. Because the Overwatch 2 mid-season patch was supposed to come out Tuesday, September 5th, but it got delayed till today, September 7th. So don't get fooled by this text. I'm sure this will be updated later. But there is a patch today. There's a bunch of changes, and we're going to read it over here on this channel. I'm going to give you my more KarQ candid thoughts and meta implications. On the main channel, if you aren't subscribed to it, that's where I just do the pure demonstration of all the changes, mostly competitive changes. But here, it's going to be a bit more raw and authentic. Here we go. Overwatch 2 Anniversary 2023. Also, this is live on Twitch, as you can tell. So, Overwatch 2 Anniversary 2023. So, we're celebrating the first year of Overwatch 2. Damn, it's already been a year, chat. Overwatch 2 came out October 4th, 2022, last year, 11 months ago. That's crazy. We're celebrating the first year of Overwatch 2. Come and play returning event game modes, including Battle for Olympus, Catch Amari, Star Watch, Mischief, and Magic. You'll also be able to take part in new challenges that reward Overwatch credits, which can be spent on returning legendary skins from the in-game shop. Join the celebration when it begins on September 19th. So in 2 more weeks, we will have, on a Tuesday, we'll have the anniversary event, replay old modes. My favorite by far was definitely the prop hunt, Mischief and Magic. They better change the map or add new spots or change a few things from it, but I think that mode is a lot of fun. Today, we also got something called Hero Mastery, the new game mode. Hero Mastery is a new single-player game mode that allows players to test their skills with individual heroes on custom courses. Push your expertise to the limit and for high scores and dominate the leaderboards. Are you up for the challenge? Okay, so there are 3 heroes available right now. It's Tracer, Mercy, and Reinhardt. Each course is different. They're rated as like what? Recruit, Agent, and Veteran. Easy, medium, hard. You need a certain score to get certain stars. Each hero can be played on 3 unique courses, increasing difficulty. Flex your skills, get 5 stars. Hero Mastery courses are scored on various factors, including time, eliminations, heals, escorts. Each hero has individual stats that are tracked as well. And then plus you can collect mastery emblems to show off your prowess. Hero Mastery is launching with an LTM, limited time event, LTE, that includes exclusive rewards. Courses for Tracer, Ryan, and Mercy are now available, along with courses for Sojourn, Winston, and more premiering in the weeks ahead. So obviously Mercy, you're gonna do some healing, some super jumps to go through her course. Ryan, you got a shield, escort, fire strike stuff. Tracer, you got to blink around, use the recall, get the high score, flex your high score in the comment section below once you play. And let's get into the meat and potatoes of today's patch. Also, a little update with the ping. Entities like Torb's turret, Symmetra's turret, or Alari pylon have a lower priority as ping targets and enemy heroes. So basically, if you're pinging an enemy, it would accidentally lock onto these entities by accident, so they fixed that. Here we go. Junker Queen's the first thing they're changing, where the impact damage is increased from 50 to 65 on her knife. Just the landing part. The bleed over time afterwards will remain the same. This change rewards throwing accuracy with the jagged blade without directly affecting Junker Queen's self-healing. That's right, because she only heals when the bleed is happening. So the raw damage is buffed. I believe the bleed is 30 damage, so this does like what, 95 now instead of 80. That's actually a pretty big buff and pretty big reward for hitting it. So it's encouraging you to stay a little bit closer so that you can actually make sure you land the knife to do more damage. I actually think Junker Queen's in a pretty decent spot right now, despite what everybody says. Junker Queen's played a little bit in the Overwatch League, as we saw. This is interesting. As good as Junker Queen is, one of her harder matchups is going to be Zarya, which we'll get to in a bit. So I don't know if this will change anything directly for her. Just as a product of the Zarya meta that may be happening, Junker Queen's going to have a tough time, so I see why they buffed it, I suppose. Also, the chat is just spamming wide duck ass, as you can tell below if you're watching this on YouTube. Ignore them. They're degenerates. There's a very quality discussion happening down below me. Okay, so Orissa's kind of been dominating in Season 6 so far, and they're nerfing her. So first of all, Fortify's cooldown will begin when the ability is activated instead of when it ends. However, its cooldown, this is actually a buff, by the way. That means as soon as you press the button, the cooldown will begin versus when it ends. So like in a vacuum, it's a buff because like it means the uptime is sooner, but the raw cooldown of it is increased from 12 to 16. This is a buff. This is a nerf. They sort of cancel each other out. The overhealth bonus is decreased from 125 to 100. I'm not gonna lie to you, Orisa has like what, 550 base health with a lot of armor, plus 600 on the Fortify. When she pops her ultimate, she gets a free Fortify. It's another 100 health. I don't think this is enough. This is not gonna nerf her tankiness or durability by any means. 25 HP doesn't seem like much, and it really isn't because she has so much to begin with. 25 HP would be a lot for other heroes, but the relative percent of her total health pool, this is pretty tiny. So this is a very minor nerf. These kind of cancel each other out, except in very certain situations, which we'll read right here, where it says the Fortify cooldown has been adjusted so that effective uptime remains the same. However, Orisa is no longer incentivized to cancel the ability early to begin the cooldown immediately, which makes the interval between uses consistent and more susceptible to counterplay. Now, I'm going to be honest, I'm sure a lot of you guys didn't even know Orisa could cancel the cooldown early, so let me show you really quick. When you press Fortify and you let it expire, see the timer, 3, 2, 1. It says 12 seconds on the bottom, but the bar is like really yellow because the 16-second cooldown began as soon as I pressed the button. Now, if the team fight is over early, previously with Orisa, you could pop Fortify and just end the Fortify, and it would still be on a 12-second cooldown because it ended. But right now, you can see on the bottom, it was at 16 seconds because there's the 16-second timer ticking behind it while it's activating. So it's just the only specific situation where you end it early is when you'll notice the nerf. But realistically, how often do you end your Fortify early, except for like maybe after a team fight is already over? I mean, I don't play enough Orisa to know all the niche situations where it's better to deactivate your Fortify early. You kind of want to just take the durability as long as you can. Maybe against Roadhog ult, that's a good example actually. Roadhog ult does melt Orisa, so you can actually want to turn off Fortify so that you can get knocked back and pushed away so less pellets hit you. Because if you Fortify up close to a whole hog, you actually get pelted. That's one situation, but who the fuck is playing Roadhog? So honestly, the overhealth nerf, not even a big deal. This is not going to change Orisa's viability at all. Just my 2 cents. Now let's get into the other hero, Zarya. Zarya got a lot more buffs this season. So this is the projected barrier. This is only the barrier, the bubble you give to a teammate. The overall health is increased from 200 to 225. The size is increased by 15%. It's a bigger bubble. The cooldown is decreased from 10 to 8 seconds. This is a huge buff to its uptime. 15% size increase is really good as well. It means it's also easier to get energy from stray bullets as well. Zarya is already in a decent spot, I felt this season. Zarya's tougher matchup is Winston, but because Bastion was so good this patch, like you saw a lot less Winstons normally. So Zarya is actually a decent matchup against Orisa and against Queen. So despite Queen getting a buff and the barely any nerfs to Orisa, these Zarya buffs to be given to a teammate are going to enable a Bastion even harder. So bubbling the Bastion or bubbling a Reaper deep in or bubbling your Genji blade. This might be enough to shift the meta, this Zarya change. Also, it's bugged right now and the cooldown is counting for both bubbles. Yeah, because they share a cooldown, right? So this is technically a buff to her personal bubble too. Zarya often spends both barrier charges on herself as it is usually more consistent for building energy. That's true. A lot of people just self-bubble anyways. The change to projected incentivizes using the barrier for her allies more often. The idea is right, but this is kind of like insane. I think increasing its size is a good start. I don't even think you need to increase the health, but the cooldown uptime is the biggest change here. So the enabling factor of this is going to have a lot of indirect consequences. Well, I guess direct in that case. I'm worried about this one, but I'm going to be honest, Zarya is one of the more fun tanks. I'm sure most tank players would prefer to play Zarya over Orisa. Zarya is a lot more engaging, fun, feast or famine, very DPS. It's very exhilarating to be high energy on Zarya because you just feel powerful and strong. But when you're playing Orisa, you just sit there and just cycle cooldowns. It feels a lot more boring. Subjectively, of course, but I feel like that's a sentiment shared by a lot of tank players. Let's keep going with the patch. Ashe has the longest total reload time of all heroes, and to balance out the advantage of being able to shoot after a partial reload, but we are shortening it to slightly make the full reload from empty less punishing. So the reload time is decreased from 0.25 to 0.2 seconds. Now on paper, it seems like a very minor buff where she reloads a little bit faster, but it's a lot more powerful when you actually look at it in game. You'll feel it. If you play enough Ashe, like those decimals don't mean anything on paper, but it's something you have to like see for yourself. Look at that. You see it? Look at it. Now, there's also a DPS passive in this game where after you get a kill, you have a faster reload. And you compound that with this. Now watch this. Ready? Did you see that? Yeah, see, the visual does a different thing to you instead of reading it on paper, right? Does it stack with more kills? No, it's a fixed, it's 30% reload increase for a DPS passive, I believe, right now. So it'll just refresh the timer. That's a pretty good Ashe buff, all things considered. Means her shot uptime is going to be very good. Okay, let's go to Bastion now. Bastion has been a hot topic in Season 6. He's been very, very powerful because he received like 8 buffs at the beginning of Season 6. So what they're doing is they're reverting the A36 tactical grenade impact damage from 30 to 15. Now there's 2 parts to his grenade damage for those who don't know. It does 100 on explosion. So it used to be 100 damage plus 30 on impact. So it did 130 if it stuck to somebody. Now it does 100 plus 15. A little less, but the grenade is still very powerful. It still does 115 up close. Configuration artillery can no longer deal critical hits. So if those who don't know, the Bastion ult, the you can headshot if it lands perfectly in the center. I think it did like 1600 damage or something at one point. I have a clip from like the Overwatch beta where I was surprised that it did that, but most people don't notice it. If you're a 200 HP hero, you're not going to notice it. If you're close enough to the center, you're going to die anyways. This is mostly for tanks randomly getting one shot if they're really not paying attention. They stand in the absolute center to get crit. But it does one shot. It used to, at least. Now, instead of critting, how much does it do in the center? It still does like a lot in the like 400, 800, or 400, 500 or something like that. But it used to do like 1,000. It was unnecessary to have this. This is a slight nerf back to what it was before. But I still think Bastion is still net buffed since Season 6. Simply because his transform into the Sentry form, the brrr form, re-heals 50 armor. Healing 50 HP with base 300 HP means you're effectively a 350 HP hero. If you get a semblance of resources, you do a lot and you're very tanky. At the highest levels, he's got a really big hitbox. Good players know how to like move around his like cooldown cycle. And if you're a Baptiste, you can rip him apart if Bastion is not careful. But I think Bastion is a noob stomper. He's still really good in high ranks, don't get me wrong, but like he's even more oppressive in the lower ranks simply because there's not enough target focus. And he can just absolutely and people don't wait for the weaker parts of him when he's not in that form, and he just absolutely melts everything. So yeah, I still see Bastion being played a lot more in the lower ranks. This nerf is like very minor, so he's still going to be played a lot in my opinion if you're running a more long distance poke comp. But you might be playing like Zarya right now, and you can pair it with Bastion to enable him even harder right now. So I don't know, I still see Bastion being played quite a bit. May. Oh, and he does damage reduction. He has Ironclad, right? So like he's even tankier, so he has even more effective health. Okay, so here's an interesting thing with Mei. The damage DPS increasing from 65 to 70 because they said she was underperforming. We're increasing the effectiveness of the primary fire, improving the quality of life to deep chill. So remember when Mei got moved to Overwatch 2, she lost the stun on the freeze gun, but it did like 100 DPS and it was really good. They nerfed it down to what was it? 60? I think it was lower than this at first. So apparently this has already been in the game. I tested this. This is just a late patch note. This has been in the game since the beginning of the season because I have before footage, and it was 50 at first. It actually got buffed to 70, but on paper it said 65. It was actually 70 the whole time. So this is actually no change since the beginning of the season. It looks like a buff on paper, but you've already been playing with it for the past few weeks. The bigger thing here is it was a stealth change, exactly. So that's something I discovered because I filmed it before and after, and we noticed that there was no change. Anyways, the duration before the slow falls up between primary fire hits is increased from 0.5 to 0.6. Basically, it means if you freeze something that's moving or freeze someone and then you look away for 0.5 seconds, after 0.5 seconds, their movement speed should be back to normal. They're no longer slowed. So now they have to wait just a little 0.1 seconds longer before all the slow is off of them. So it means they're slowed if Mei switches targets for a little longer. This is pretty minor based on my understanding of this. The bigger thing though is deep chill. Now this was the change they added in Mei for like season 4, where if you freeze people long enough, they get marked with a passive called deep chill. When they're blue and deep chilled, it means you can pop them with an icicle to do bonus damage. Now, it can now be triggered with the quick melee, which is really nice at close range. So for those who don't know, it was something like this. Let's see Roadhog here. It's like this, watch. Boom, do you see that blue thing? See his feet? Boom, that means he has deep chill on him, which means the primary fire right after will do bonus damage. Now you can do it with melee. That's actually really good, if you're out of ammo especially. You could pretty much kill them without an icicle up close. You just hold it a little longer, a 200 HP hero. So this is pretty minor. I don't think Mei is played a lot in Brawl, and there's just not that much Reinhardt Ramattra this season, simply because Orisa Bastion is played so much. I have not seen very many Ramattras in my 4 weeks of playing top 500 ranked on North America. It's just been Orisa everywhere. So I don't foresee Mei being played. Well, I mean, if there is a Zarya meta, like Mei could wall off the Zarya, but if there's a Bastion behind, it just means Bastion melts the wall. So like Mei is not played for the wall value. And then this DPS, this freeze into the primary thing is pretty minor when you consider all the supports. So much extra healing with Pylon being active. The heal beam from Illari is so potent up close. There's Weaver. Yeah, I don't foresee Mei entering the meta by any means, but it doesn't mean she's bad. Yeah, that's my thoughts on her. Next, we have a big change here, the support passives, okay? So the duration until the support passive activates is increased from 1.5 to 2 seconds. This is a nerf. Support heroes have received individual improvements to their survivability and are quite strong overall, so we're reducing the impact of the role-wide passive. So now if you take damage as a support and you duck into cover, you have to wait for 2 seconds before you start regenerating HP, instead of 1.5 seconds. A slight nerf, it means you have to wait, obviously wait a little longer. I actually think in early Overwatch 2 beta, it was 1 second back in the day, and I'm like, man, this is OP. And I actually think this is a decent change. I do think supports are really good right now. I rewatched an old Overwatch 1 video of mine where I used to play support. When I got hit a little bit as BAP or Ana and I ducked in cover, I had to wait for my teammate to like heal me, or I had to run to a health pack. Made flankers so good in Overwatch 1. If they just poke me a little bit, as an Ana, I had to nade myself back in the day. Every time. It was actually just like, I don't know. I've been spoiled by the support passive in Overwatch 2, and I think this is a fine change to it. Just you have to be a little bit more careful. Still net better than all the years of Overwatch 1. So if people believe supports are overpowered, I think supports are really good. It's fine. Coming from someone who's been playing almost exclusively Baptiste this season, I think these changes are fine, in the right direction. As biased as I am, I've always said Baptiste is so good. Like, he does too much. He does everything. And then when they changed it so Regen Burst gets the flat healing, they gave him the widescreen ultimate in Overwatch 1 for no reason. He never needed that. He was already a good hero, simply because he could dish out so much damage and heal so much with the grenades. The regen burst is just free healing. He's got a lamp, his window. Like, BAP is such a good hero. But anyways, they're nerfing the regen burst though. So the instant flat healing decreased from 50 to 40, the flat healing. The heal over time is decreased from 50 over 5 seconds to 40 over 4 seconds. Now remember, Baptiste's regen burst got changed where if there's anybody less than half health on your team, the instant flat healing, this part gets doubled. So you used to get 100 plus 50 over 5. So you could literally heal 150 for someone less than half without looking at them. Now you heal 80 plus 40, so 120 instead of 150. That's a sizable nerf to regen burst, but it's still net better than what he was earlier in Overwatch 2 when he didn't even have the instant like double healing when they're weak, when they're low HP. I don't know what Blizzard's cooking, but maybe someone in there felt BAP was weak back then. I've never thought he was weak in Overwatch 2 ever, but they overloaded his kit. So this is fine. This nerf is, I'm still gonna play him. I think they could actually nerf him even more and he'd still be really good. Especially in ranked. That's my opinion on BAP. He's still gonna be played simply because Orisa's being played. Though, if we do have the Zarya meta with Bastion and thing, having a nano boost available on your team is actually really good too. That's something else to consider. But BAP is a safe ranked hero, dishes out damage, heals very safe, has mobility, he's got it all. All right, Kiriko, the last thing is Protection Suzu no longer knocks back enemy heroes, so the projectile doesn't need to impact them. This quality of life change prevents accidental activations when thrown into groups with both enemies and allies. Protection Suzu now passes through enemy heroes. There's very niche situations where I would actually want to splash the Suzu on an enemy. I can think of one instance right now where like this is a nerf where it's like Sigma lifting me up and the Sigma's really close to me and I'm nowhere near a building to splash my Suzu. I threw it off the, I splashed it off the enemy Sigma lifting me up if he lifts me really closely, and then I get my Suzu and get slammed down and take no damage. The other way is to obviously throw it at the ground when you're getting lifted up by Flux, and hopefully it hits the ground as you get slammed. You have to counteract two different velocities. So like when you throw the projectile, it's slower, but then the Sigma slam comes down a little quicker. You have to land at the same time. Because if you land and then Suzu, it's too late. You took the damage. That's the only niche situation. This is still a net buff in other situations, so you could just chuck it into a group. So, yeah. It'll still hit the Sigma shield. It only passes through enemy hero, like, units themselves. So anyways, this is a net buff to Kiriko. Not a big deal. But this BAP nerf is not enough. I still think BAP is really good. Kiriko's fine. Mei is no change. It pretty much feels the same, other than nice quality of life change up close here. Bastion pretty much feels the same. Ashe is really good. That's a big buff. Big buff Zarya. No, barely any change to Orisa. I would actually say this is a pretty decent Draco Queen change. This changes breakpoints from 80 to 95. 80 to 95 into a one good primary fire could kill now, probably. So I actually think this is medium-sized change, minor change Orisa, big change Zarya, big change Ashe, small change Bastion, small change Mei, honestly, small change BAP, small change Kiriko. So a pretty minor patch for the balance of the game. Then we have some bug fixes, and there was actually a Bastion fix I want to point out here, where there was an error earlier in the season where the vertical knockback on Bastion's tactical grenade was being reduced. They fixed it, so now he actually he can rocket jump a little bit more consistently now, apparently. So that's a buff to his. If you're going to use it for yourself, that means there's less damage to be used on the enemy, so I guess that's fine. Couple of interaction fixes, and Kiriko had a bug where you couldn't swift step to allies within rooms with low ceilings. This ability's been bugged for way too long, but it's a lot better now, so not complaining. And finally, Lifeweaver. This one was big, where they fixed a bug allowing friendly EMPs to destroy a pedal platform. That was actually a pretty bad one. I saw an example of this clip early in the season when someone showed me. But yeah, that's the patch. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Go enjoy Hero Mastery.